Good morning, my dear students, and welcome to the class on history. So, we are dealing with the chapter called Renaissance. The previous class we had completed the definition of Renaissance and the two different causes of Renaissance, the capture of Constantinople and the decline of feudalism. Today we are continuing with the same topic and we are going to deal with the next cause, that is the new sea routes. How did it become a factor for Renaissance? New sea routes, it means the navigators of Portugal and Spain were interested in geographical explorations and their geographical explorations led to the discovery of sea routes. So the navigators of Portugal and Spain, they had conducted various geographical explorations and those explorations led to the discovery of sea routes. We have got Prince Henry, who discovered the sea route to Africa. Bartholomew Dias reached Cape of Good Hope. 1942 we have Columbus discovering America. 1498 we have Vasco da Gama reaching as far as in India. And we have the Ferdinand Magellan, who took the voyage around the world and reached the Pacific Ocean. So, and with all these discoveries, what was the advantage of it? There was a contact between East and the West. Because of all these new routes, there was a contact between East and the West. Because of these people, like I told you, Prince Henry, Bartholomew Dias, Columbus, Vasco da Gama, with their discoveries brought together the West and the East. And there was a spirit of adventure. It enriched the trade and also it began to have a strong mental health for the people. So this is what the term called new sea routes. The discovery of new sea routes brought a contact between the East and the West. It enriched the trade, a spirit of adventure and a strong mental health also became possible because of the new sea routes. Now next one, that is the spirit of inquiry. Spirit of inquiry. And what does it mean? The spirit of inquiry. The spirit of inquiry means the human activities till then were controlled by the Pope and the Church. It means the Church will tell you what to believe, what not to believe. All your actions were controlled by the Church and by the Pope. But the scholars began to have a spirit of inquiry and curiosity, and they taught the people to know why and how of things. Why and how of things. So till then your activities were controlled by the Church and the Pope, but scholars began to instill the spirit of inquiry and curiosity. And they taught the people to know why and how of a thing. And they questioned the authority of the Church, and they began to have three things. One is reason, observation and experimentation. Reason, observation and experimentation. Reason, observation and experimentation. There are three things that are related to this particular spirit of inquiry. The first, role of original thinkers. Role of original thinkers. Second, crusades. And third is the development of science. These are the three things that are included the spirit of inquiry. So remember, spirit of inquiry means till then your activities were controlled by the church and the pope, but the scholars began to instill the spirit of inquiry and curiosity, taught the people to know why and how of things. They began to rely on reason, observation and experimentation. The first element is the role of original thinkers. The church till then discouraged original thinking by the people, and they asked the people to have faith in the dogmas or the teachings of the church. So the church did not encourage original thinking. But the independent thinkers criticized the church and they began to develop their own thinking. We have Roger Bacon and Thomas Aquinas, who criticized the church and they began to give stress on reasoning. When the church tells you something to do, you see what is the reason behind it. You reason on why am I supposed to do it. So they began to give stress on reasoning, and these people, the independent thinkers or the original thinkers, were known as the forerunners of Renaissance. The role that played by the original thinkers. Second is the Crusades. Crusades are the religious expeditionary wars, which means religious wars conducted by the church to restore the church access to the holy places and places near in Jerusalem. Which means these are the activities, these are the wars organized, done by the church to restore their access to the holy places and the places near in Jerusalem. And what was the impact of this particular crusades? The crusades brought a contact with European people and the Asian people. The European people and the Asian people. They brought together, they brought a contact between the European people and the Asian people. And the rise of Western European ideas widened their outlook on life, and they began to rely on reason. So understand what you mean the term called crusades and what was its impact. It brought a contact between the European people and the Asian people. And the last one is development of the science. The medieval scholars, the scholars of at that time, began to have a scientific attitude and observe things in nature that led to new inventions and discoveries. The spirit of inquiry and the scientific temper. So we have the examples like Roger Bacon, the use of horseless carriages and flying machines. We have Copernicus, who said Earth moves round the sun. We have Galileo, who discovered telescope. So that's what you by the development in the field of science. So these are the three things that are included in the spirit of inquiry. The first one, the role of original thinkers. Second, the crusades. And third one is the development of science. Now moving on to the last reason, last cause, that is the invention of printing press. Invention of printing press. Invention of printing press. In the 15th century, Gutenberg discovered first printing press in Germany. 15th century. It happened in Germany, and it was by Gutenberg, and Caxton brought it in England. So began in Germany, later in England he also got this particular first the printing press, and it was by Caxton. So Gutenberg in Germany and Caxton in England. Because of this invention of printing press, it began to produce books in large number. Till then people had to write. So with the invention of printing press, they began to produce books in large number. The Bible, the religious books and the classical books were printed and it was made available all over Europe. And what is the advantage of it? Because of this particular printing press, spread knowledge far and wide, easier to get read printed books than the manuscripts, and it was within the reach of the people and influenced people's attitude and life. And there was a new awakening because of the invention of a printing press. How did it affect the life of the people? Spread knowledge far and wide. It was easier to read the printed books than the manuscripts. It was within the reach of the people. It influenced their attitude and life. And there was a new awakening. So these are the 5 causes for the rise of Renaissance: capture of Constantinople, decline of feudalism, new trade routes, spirit of inquiry. There are 3 subpoints to be learned, and the last one, invention of printing press. Now we move on to the next topic, that is, what are the principles of Renaissance? The principles of Renaissance. There are 3 of the first one is humanism. The first one is humanism. Second is the glorification of human form. Glorification of human form. The third is the spirit of inquiry. So these are the 3 principles of Renaissance. The first one is humanism. And humanism comes from the Latin word called studia humanitatis, which means studies of human or studies of mankind. Comes from the Latin word called studia humanitatis, which means studies of mankind. And what do you mean the term called humanism? Humanism extols or glorifies man and the essential dignity of the human being. And man of flesh and blood, with all his joys and sorrows, which means man is with flesh and blood, and with all the joys and happiness, all the joys and sorrows related to him. And this humanism is against religious asceticism. Asceticism means they will tell you not to do this, not to go there. There are various restrictions given by the religion. And they believe in man's right to pleasure, satisfaction of earthly desires and requirements. This is what is the term called humanism, which means they extol the human being, and according to them, a human body with all the flesh and blood, with all the joys and sorrows, has the right to pleasure, satisfying their earthly desires and requirements. The dignity that is given to the human being. That's what the term called humanism. Second is the glorification of human form. And according to them, they glorified the human body. And they believe that man with an active mind and body can know and control the world, perform miracles, and can fashion one's own happiness. That's what they believed. A human person with an active mind and body can know and control the world, perform miracles, and fashion one's own happiness. And this particular human body was expressed in art and literature. The last one is the spirit of inquiry. Spirit of inquiry, which means they believed in the limitless potentialities of human person. But they understood that the spirit of inquiry and the scientific inquiry could touch every realm of knowledge. Whether the human beings have got the limitless potentialities of human being, they believed in the limitless potentialities of a human person, but there is something called the spirit of inquiry and the scientific inquiry that can touch every aspect of knowledge. So these are the three basic principles: humanism, glorification of human form, and the spirit of inquiry. And the next topic is the beginning of Renaissance. Beginning of Renaissance. Beginning of Renaissance. Happened in Italy. Now we will see the reasons why it began in Italy. Italy was the seat of glorious Roman Empire, and Italy contained historical remains and relics of Romans. So it attracted the scholars and artists. So Italy was the seat of glorious Roman Empire. It contained, or it had, historical remains and the relics. Relics, I told you, the remainings of a holy person. Okay, relics of Romans. So because of all these things, the scholars and artists were attracted towards Italy. That's the first reason. Second, the Greek scholars who migrated to Italy after the fall of Constantinople carried with them the original manuscripts and art treasures, and they encouraged the Italian artists and the men of letters, people involved in the field of literature, to produce something very brilliant. Second is the flood of Greek scholars to Italy. Second one. Third one, the enormous wealth of Italy. Italy was a country with a huge amount of wealth. So the wealthy merchants patronized artists and the literary figures. They began to have interest in the revival of classical culture and literature. The enormous wealth of Italy. And the last one, the crusades and explorations brought Italy in contact with the East. Italy became in touch with the East because of the crusades and the explorations. Because of their contact, they began to broaden their vision. This is how, or this is what you might the term called the beginning of Renaissance, and why it happened in Italy. The reason is that Italy was considered the seat of glorious Roman Empire, the flood of Greek scholars to Italy, and the enormous wealth it had, and Italy came in contact with the East. These are the reasons why. These are the things that have to be learned in the beginning of a Renaissance. I hope it is clear for you. We have completed the causes of Renaissance, the three basic principles, and the beginning of Renaissance. I hope it is clear for you. Go through the video once again and try to understand the explanation properly. Thank you, children.